and talking. For today's science lesson, you're going to be doing your own experiment with some bubbles. But before we do the experiment, I wanted to do a quick review of the scientific method. So I'm going to show you this video called Steps of the Scientific Method in 3 minutes. So pay attention to that for the steps, and then after the video, there will be a video of me showing and explaining the experiment for today. It's optional to watch that part of the video because I did include written directions on the document where you found this link. So if you feel comfortable just reading the directions and doing it yourself, that's totally fine. Or if you want to watch me explain it, that is another option for you. So 2 choices, up to you, whichever one you prefer. So we're gonna watch the video.
Welcome to Moo Math and Science. In this video, I'd like to go through the steps of the scientific method in 3 minutes or less. The scientific method is a systematic way to find answers to questions or problems. Step 1, identify the problem. What would you like to know? Problems are written in the form of a question. Step 2 is research. The research can be in the form of looking on the internet, talking to other people, reading scientific books, magazines, etc. Step 3 is form a hypothesis, which is an educated guess. The hypothesis should be based on research or life experience. Step 4 is design an experiment. The experiment should be designed to test the hypothesis, and during the experiment, observations are used to collect measurable data. The experiment will include 3 variables. First variable is the independent variable. It is the part of the experiment that you change to see how it affects the dependent variable. The independent variable is always graphed on the x-axis. The dependent variable is the part of the experiment that changes in response to the independent variable. The dependent variable is always graphed on the y-axis. And then you have control variables. These are variables that should be held constant and are used for comparing. In addition, a large sample size increases the accuracy of the experiment and results. And many times you need to repeat the experiment several times to ensure against errors that may be introduced. Step 5 is results. This is the information that you have gathered. Quantitative data is data that is numbered. Many times it is recorded on charts, tables, and graphs. Qualitative data includes illustrations and photographs, and this is data that is observed. And finally, step 6 is the conclusion, and during the conclusion you give a summary of the overall results, and you state whether or not you accept or reject your hypothesis, and then describe if there's any practical application to what you have learned. So there we go, the 6 steps of the scientific method in 3 minutes or less.
Alright, so now it is time for you to go through the scientific method process and come up with your experiment. So the first thing you need to do in this process is to make an observation. So in this case, we're going to be observing bubbles. So make an observation about bubbles, watch this lesson, and see what happens when I form bubbles. So we'll actually do that in a few minutes, but think about it. Think about what you already know about bubbles. What do they look like? How do they form? And then you're going to think of a question. So the second step of the scientific method is to ask a question. What do you want to find out from your experiment? What do you wonder? So here are some examples of ideas you might want to test, but you are free to come up with your own question to test. So the question I'm going to be testing today is what container makes the tallest bubble tower. So I have some different sizes of containers and shapes. I've got a little cup like that, a bigger cup, a Tupperware, a bowl. So I'm going to test to see how the shape of a container changes my which container shape can make the tallest bubble tower. Another thing you might want to test is, can I make a taller bubble tower by taking big breaths and blowing lots of air in my straw at once, or by blowing lots of small breaths with little amounts of air. So for example, are you going with your straw, blowing water on my face, or are you going, does that change how your bubbles are created, or your bubble tower? So you could test that out. Another question you might have is, what amount of water makes the tallest bubble tower? So maybe you're just going to use one container and change the amount of water in it. So maybe start off small and add a little more and more and more. See if that affects how tall the bubble tower gets. Or instead of the water, maybe you want to keep the water the same, but change the amount of soap. So does changing your amount of soap affect how tall the bubble tower you get? So those are just examples of questions. Like I said, if you have something you want to find out, go for it and come up with your question. But right now, I want you to decide what question you are going to be testing with your experiment. Because the next thing we are going to do is make a hypothesis. So let me scroll down on my paper here, make sure I don't miss any of our directions. So a hypothesis is an educated guess of the answer to the question that you're testing with your experiment. So for me, my question was, what shape of a container is going to create the tallest bubble tower? And my hypothesis is going to be my guess based on what I already know. So what do I already know about bubbles? I'm going to think about that. And what do I know about these containers? What can I observe or notice about them? That is going to help me come up with a guess. So I haven't done this yet, but my hypothesis is that this glass is going to create the tallest bubble tower. And I'm thinking that because it's the tallest container that I have. So I think it's going to make the bubbles go tall. So I don't know if that's true. I need to do my experiment in order to confirm that, or to figure out whether a different container is my thing. But whatever question you're testing, you're going to come up with a hypothesis for it. And I encourage you to write down your question and your hypothesis, because scientists usually keep a journal or something. So if you have a piece of paper available to you to help kind of keep you on track, write down what question you're testing for your experiment, and then what your hypothesis is. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think the answer to the question is? And it's totally okay if it's wrong. Scientists are wrong on their hypothesis all the time. That's why we have scientists, because we can't figure everything out the first time. You gotta keep testing and testing and testing, and that'll usually bring up more questions, and it's sort of just like an endless process of wondering and discovering. So the fun part now is you get to conduct your experiments, step 4 in our scientific process. So you are going to need to get your materials and set them up for the experiment. I really recommend you do this outside if you have that available to you, because then you don't have to worry about getting bubbles and water everywhere. But if not, if you have a cookie sheet like this where there's like a raised edge to kind of contain the water, I would recommend using that if you're doing it inside. And even if you're doing it outside, just kind of because it's easier to clean up that way. So if you're testing different container shapes like I am, you might want to go get some different waterproof containers. Mine have glass, but if you have plastic, I would recommend using that, because they will get pretty slippery when they have soap and water on them, and I don't want anyone to get in trouble for breaking something or get hurt with glass. You're going to need a straw. So at my house, we have these metal reusable straws. If you are not sure if you have a straw, take a look, because I found one of my reusable water bottles, the lid for my hydro flask has a straw connected to it, and you can actually just easily pull it off and use that as a straw. And when we're done with the experiment, I can rinse it off and put it back on. So if you have a reusable water bottle, you might be able to use that. If you have wax paper, you could try to roll it up into like a little tube and see if that works. And actually, a lot of pens could work as well if you don't throw them across your kitchen. So if you take a look, I can unscrew my pen, and this part's the tube's sort of like a straw. And even though there's a lid, there's like a room for air in the top. I don't know if And then again, you could always just go into a gas station or Starbucks and borrow a straw from them. So whatever works for you to get access to a straw. The next thing you're going to want is some water. To make it easier on myself, I have this little pitcher of water that I use for watering my plants in my house, but you could just go back and forth from the sink. If you are doing an experiment where you're testing out container shapes or the amount of soap, you're going to need a measuring cup so that you have the same amount of water in all of your different containers. I'm using a quarter cup here. I would not use anything bigger than half a cup, so try to use something small. It doesn't have to be a measuring cup if you just have like a little cup for ketchup or something. That could work too. Just something small that you could have a same amount of water for each thing. And then you are going to need dish soap. So my dish soap is in this container that I keep on my counter. Usually dish soap comes in a big plastic container. I just pour it into here because it looks better. I have like kind of watery dish soap, so I probably need to use a little bit more soap than other people might if you have like Dawn or something. But any soap will work if it's liquid. So if you don't have dish soap right now, you can get some just regular hand soap or body wash or even some shampoo should work okay. Just use what you have. We have to make it work. And let me see. I think that's it. We have straw, water, a container, baking sheet, and soap. So that's all you need. I would also recommend using your iPad so that you can take pictures of your results. And if you know how to use a ruler and you have one available to you, I would grab that so that you can measure how tall your bubble towers are. But if you don't have a ruler, you can just use kind of anything to measure your things again. So maybe even your straw could be the thing you're measuring. So maybe one tower goes up to here or here. You could use your arm, grab a pen and mark that down. Or just take pictures on your iPad so you can see the difference of the sizes. So I think that's everything for materials. Now we're going to get started with the whole process. So this is the fun part. For me, I'll show you with this cup here. Because I'm putting this inside, I'm going to put it in the middle of my baking sheet there so that it can control all of my bubbles. And because I'm testing different containers, I want to measure out my water, so I put the same amount of water in all of my containers. If you're only using one cup for this because you're testing out whether how hard you blow changes it or the amount of soap, you don't need this, but I'm going to do that. So I'm going to measure out my water, pour it in my cup, and I would put the same amount in all of my other containers as well. But I'm not going to show you that process because I don't want to ruin the results. I want you to figure it out on your own. And then I'm going to put a few drops of soap. So most people, you're probably only going to need 2 or 3 drops of soap. My soap's like some eco soap, so it doesn't bubble up as much. So I'm going to put like 4 or 5 drops. You really don't need a lot. And it kind of comes out fast, so be careful. Because you do want to try to put the same amount of soap in all of your other containers as well if you're doing the container method. Then you want to take your straw and gently stir that soap into the water so it's mixed in. And you would do that for any other containers you're using as well. And then now you get to finally start testing. Make your bubble tower. You want to make sure that you blow through your straw out. You do not want to be sucking in or you're going to end up accidentally drinking soap water, and that will not taste good. So if you need to double check how you use your straw, hold up your hand and blow. If you're doing it correctly, you should be feeling air or wind on your hand. If you don't feel that, you need to keep practicing until you can figure it out. So the opposite of what you do when you're drinking. Okay, once you have figured out how to use a straw, put it in the middle of your cup. And I want you to take a look at your water and your soap mixture and see what you notice. So what does it look like to begin with? How much small is your bubble tower before you start blowing bubbles. And then once you have figured that out, if you're writing it down, I would recommend doing that. If you are using your iPad, take a picture of the before so you get a kind of before and after. And then you are going to start making your bubble tower. So I'm going to put my straw in here and I'm going to blow until I have a bubble tower. Woo! Okay, so if I have my iPad, I would try to take a picture of it. If I'm using my straw measure, I would say that it went up to here. So try to remember that. If I'm using my arm, I could make a mark saying it was there. My bubbles just sort of collapsed, so I could keep going and try to maybe use my hand to mark the highest point. But I don't want to pop the bubble, so my highest point was here, so for me that's right where my straw ends. So I would either write that down, take a picture for my recording, and then I would use my other containers to repeat that same process. You're going to want to dump this out and rinse it off before you put a different kind of cup on it, of course. But keep going and notice what happens when you're doing it. Maybe as you're doing it, you'll come up with some new things you want to test, but try to first answer the question that you're testing. Come up with some results for that. And once you're done experimenting, make sure that you clean up after yourself. Don't make a mess. Don't be a slob. We don't want that. Be responsible for your own space. And then we're going to do the last couple steps of the scientific process. So step 1 is to draw conclusions. That can literally mean you draw what you figured out, but drawing conclusions kind of also means coming up with a conclusion, an idea of what happened. So was your hypothesis correct? Did your guess earlier match up with what you saw? What did you discover? What new questions do you have now? You can go test those out if you have time. Like, what did you learn from doing this? What did you discover? And then the last step is record and share the results. So I want you to either draw what you discovered, take a little video of it, write it down, whichever way you have a record of it so that you remember what you learned. And then you want to share, so go tell somebody about what happened, and you can even show them your pictures and stuff and explain how that works. So you can do that to someone who's in the house with you, or family, or you can tell a friend, you can talk to your class about it when you guys have your next Zoom meeting, whatever is best for you. So all of this information is in the document where you found this video, so you can have someone help you read it if you are having a hard time reading it, or you can always rewind the video, and that should help clear up any confusion that you might have. I hope that you enjoy going through the scientific process, and you have a great weekend.